Good evening, everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for joining us tonight. I want to introduce everyone here on the front table that's going to be speaking. So our select board members are all here. Chair Bob Jones, Sean Renier, and Gordon Bailey. Myself, Chris Britton, Town Administrator. We have both Police Chief Greg DeSantis and Fire Chief Ryan Brown. Our DPW Superintendent Lenny Tisdale and Highway Supervisor Zach Sorrentino. Also with us is Brian Humes of Jakunski Humes Architects. He's the designer and consultant for our feasibility study. And finally, our building commissioner, Matt Colmer. So welcome again, everyone. Just our agenda for tonight. We want to talk a little bit about our existing facilities, kind of try to paint a picture of why we're here tonight, why we have a feasibility study that we did for this project and the needs that we have. Then we'll talk a little bit about some locations we looked at, the proposal for the new facility, and then a little bit of time on the approval process and the funding process for the project. So I want to turn it over to Chief Brown, who will talk a little bit about our existing fire and EMS facilities.
Good evening. I'm going to start tonight by drawing your attention to the ambulance garage, which we currently use as fire department headquarters. It's located at 177 Main Street. It's right there. This year, in cleaning the building, we actually found decay that we didn't know existed until the siding fell off, which we got the building stabilized part-time, but when we were working on this project, we started thinking, how much money do we want to put in that building if a new building is in the future? Some of the problems we have with the current building, of course, is it is structurally unsound. Internally, we are out of room for storage needs, in particular our secure medical record storage and our increasing need for medical equipment supply. If you look right here, this is our current medical supply room, and it is stuffed to the nines. This is a corner of the building in the front facing Main Street that we didn't know was falling apart until the siding fell off. We did take some evasive action to secure the building. Other problems with this building is our educational area is woefully undersized for our current needs. It comfortably seats about 30 people. It is commonly used by fire, police, EMS. The DPW uses it for some of their OSHA training. A lot of other government function like the Mass Rural Water Works meets there occasionally. The building department on the state level has had education for building officials there also. But the classroom in recent years has turned also into overflow storage, which has cut our capacity of seating down also. The workflow, when the building was created, it was created for people to stay at, but not work out of full time. So we have two offices in the building that our administrative workflow is tough sometimes. We just don't have enough space to get the work done. Another problem that we have with the building is for the on-duty crews, the men and women of the Lee Fire Department are in two categories. We have our call firefighters, which I like to call our on-call community firefighters. These are people that live and work in the community, and they drop what they're doing to answer the call. But since 2016, we also have full-time staff, which work on a 24-hour shift, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And this room is where they eat their meals, do their reports, do their paperwork, take a rest when they need a rest, because this is the room that they have. Recently, in response to demands of needs, we've increased to 3 people. We don't have room in this room for another desk, so we're trying to move things around. We don't have appropriate locker and laundry facilities for the full-time staff, which basically means When they go on calls and they get dirty, which I'll let you use your imagination what that means, there's nowhere for them to clean themselves out until they come back into the living portion of the building, which is really unsafe. It creates a very unsafe environment for them. Before I move on to the fire station, are there any questions about the 177 Main Street, the EMS building? Yes, Mr. Garofoli.
If I remember correctly, it's not ADA compliant too, correct?
This building is partially ADA compliant. The door that we use to the main entrance has stairs, but the door to the classroom is at grade. So it does have a component of compliancy. That's why we moved my office into that building instead of upstairs on the other building. So it takes some work, and we have to move the chairs and tables in the classroom to get people into the building, but there is access. That was a good question, though, thank you.
Not central, though, right? Yeah.
Central station is not. So this is our beloved Central Fire Station located right next door at 179 Main Street. I think it's the jewel of firehouses in New England, if not the world. Unfortunately, it's getting old. It was built as a two-bay station to house a horse-drawn and a hand-drawn piece of equipment. Through renovations, the doors were enlarged to the maximum size they can be right now, and a center door was actually added where the staircase used to be to get to the second floor. That was done a number of years ago. We find with modern fire apparatus, which aren't getting any smaller, the picture here we see, I guess it's your left, my right, is this is how close we have to be to the electrical panel in the back wall to fit the apparatus in the building. This is as far as the doors open to get into the fire trucks because of the structure of the building. One of the problems that we have is all of our fire apparatus has to be custom made for height and width. The standard fire apparatus width right now is what they call a 100-inch chassis. We custom ordered 96-inch chassis. 4 inches doesn't sound like much, but when you look at this truck coming out the door, 4 inches is everything. This truck was designed to be 106 inches tall. The average fire truck now standard is 9'6", up to 10'6" is the standard height on fire trucks. All of ours are under 9 feet tall, and that does drive up the price when we have to customize the suspension and chassis. Another problem is the depth of the firehouse. We cannot build fire trucks to fit the community needs. We have to build fire trucks to fit the building, which is a shame because we need more trucks to do less work because we have to make them so small. Not saying that as the town continues to grow, we wouldn't maintain the current fleet that we have, but it's just really hard now to get a fire truck to fit into the building. Another problem that we have is what we call unsafe crew conditions. We are governed by the oversight of the National Fire Protection Association, as well as recently we have some OSHA oversight. And we are forced to store our firefighting garments adjacent to fire trucks, which puts the dressing firefighters in the traffic flow of departing apparatus, as well as it exposes our equipment, which each one of those ensembles costs about $5,300 now, and it puts them to carcinogen and diesel particulate contamination every time we start a truck. One of the problems is the ceiling height of the station is so low that we cannot put a diesel evacuation system in the building and still fit the trucks in. So because no one lives in this building full-time, OSHA and the NFPA says it's okay that we don't have it, but we do have this safety problem of apparatus moving in and out while people are getting dressed. Also, the beautiful old girl does not have a fire alarm system in it at this time, and it is not occupied. So it's always been a concern what if, and we'll only know that there's a problem in the building when it's too late. Another point about the building is we don't have adequate decontamination areas. Unfortunately, we go to car accidents, we get certain things on us. We go to fires, we get certain things on us. And we have to clean up after these incidents. A lot of the cleanup that we have to do is out of doors on the apron or in this beautiful sink that was probably installed a number of years ago. It usually works. The building is not ADA, AAB compliant either, which means that anyone with any mobility disabilities cannot actually get in the building and move around. And if you were to see inside the building, just getting in the building would be problem enough. The apparatus is so close together, and I don't have a picture of that right now, that I have a hard time moving in between the pieces of apparatus, because you have to do this, which is unfortunate, but it's the world that we're accustomed to living in. Are there any questions about Central Fire Station and some of the shortcomings that we see that need to be corrected in the future? Well, with that, I will hand over the floor to my compadre down the street wearing blue this evening, the Police Chief Craig DeSantis.
All right, thank you, Chief Brown. I'm not so sure I'm going to be as polished as he was, but I'll do my level best to paint a picture for you all. I just want to start by thanking everybody in the room for your interest and for coming out tonight to hear what we have to say. I thought it fitting we start with the police department history. I did find some historic records that indicated in the 1800s sometime, the town constructed a single jail cell. I don't have much beyond that as far as what happened to that jail cell, but ultimately, when the department was formalized, it was housed in the town hall, and it's been there ever since. Moving forward to 1992, town hall was renovated at that time, and the police department had been entirely in the basement, but there was some administrative area opened up on the first floor. So 32 years later, the police department remains in town hall with a mix of non-departmental municipal employees. The department's spread throughout various areas of town hall, making it a difficult environment. But since 1992, our full-time staffing has increased by about 35%. And more importantly, or as important, the complexity and volume of calls that we deal with has changed significantly. So, during the time, officers have rallied. We've tried to make our own improvements with Home Depot, well, Dresser Hall grade stuff. So, but we've done our best to work with what we've been given, and we'll continue to do that. But I want to try to lay out some of the other issues we're dealing with and where we'd like to go. So, why the need for the station? This is kind of like a broad overview, and I'll probably go back and touch on some of these reasons with a little bit more detail. But bottom line is we're looking for space creation to address inadequate staffing space and create appropriate public service area. We need remediation for unsecured cruiser parking. A big issue is operational liability currently, the way things are laid out. So we'd like to reduce that. We want to increase the space so we can bring the department in line with modern practices. Policing, like every other industry, is always evolving, especially with IT. Best practices are always changing and improving. We're constantly reassessing how we can best serve our community. The other issue is that some of the areas are concerning, and we'd like to address some health and safety and security issues for members of the department, but also persons in custody and even town hall staff. And then, of course, our goal is to create a public safety building that meets the needs of our community. So, with that, currently we have 13 full-time police officers, 3 reserve officers, 1 civilian full-time administrative assistant, and 1 shared civilian full-time mental health and substance use disorder co-responder. She comes out to calls with us. I also thought it was appropriate to give some basic data. Now, this is a broad overview. I went back from 9/1/22 through 11/1/23 and just took a look at some of what we were dealing with so I can paint that picture for all of you. So during that time, we logged over 9,500 service calls or officer-initiated calls, and that resulted in 448 criminal and non-criminal follow-up investigations. Additionally, we conducted 124 criminal investigations resulting in arrests, criminal summons, indictments, or arrest warrants. On top of that, we had 202 motor vehicle accident investigations that we conducted. Now, mind you, some of those were just fender benders, and while others were serious incidences with serious injury. So, of course, we take care of traffic control, but beyond that, I just wanted to list a few abbreviated things that we've dealt with, because some of them are quite serious. I'm not sure that everybody understands some of the things that go on in town. So we've dealt with armed robbery, home invasions, felony assaults involving weapons, violent felony domestic assaults, residential business vehicle break-ins, felony thefts, motor vehicle thefts, rape, adult sexual assault, child sexual assault, physical child abuse, elderly sexual assaults, child pornography issues, drug offenses, and of course serious motor vehicle offenses. So those are some of the things that the men and women of the police department deal with. So I told you I'd touch on some of those points. This is our existing storage area. And as you can see, I tried to paint the picture. We are beyond capacity. We're beyond capacity for our storage of equipment. We're beyond capacity for employee locker space. We're beyond capacity for file storage. And unfortunately, that's led to very difficult organizational situations. And we do our best, but it's not always the right thing to do. I do want to articulate a little further on that. By that I mean, if we have files, we comply with all laws, but for instance, we have to put files in rooms and places that we wouldn't otherwise want to do it. They're locked, but it's certainly not appropriate. That's just one example of many that I could give you. So moving on to the actual workspace and the limitations that presents, I took a picture of three of the main rooms that we work in. This is one room that we use quite a bit. We use this as an audio video recording room when we interview suspects. It's required by law. We also use this to interview victims. And when I say victims, I just want to add that it's a very difficult and challenging place for a victim to come in. It's their worst day. They could be under significant or severe stress, right? And they come in and they want to talk to us. And we want to give them a private and secure area that we can talk to them about whatever they had dealt with. So this is one of the places we do that. But as you'll see, it's very difficult to cordon off that area because we're in such tight quarters, and sometimes we're dealing with suspects in the same environment the next room over where other administrative duties are going on. So it makes it very challenging to address the needs of victims and witnesses when we're working in that kind of environment. But this room also serves as a staff break room. It's a backup computer workstation for officers. We use it as a training room, and sometimes we even use it as a firearms cleaning area. Of course, it's not ventilated, but sometimes we can't avoid it. This is another example of the second room. We could have as many as 6 officers in this small space coming in, 3 officers going out, 3 officers coming in. We have 2 workstations in there. As you can imagine, when you have 6 officers standing in there trying to do roll call duties, basically passing along information, it's a very tight area to do that. We also use, in addition to the roll call and briefing area, we use that to post officer safety bulletins. Now, mind you, this room is also used, depending on the type of statement we're taking written statements in there. So we have members of the public in there all the time, which makes it very challenging for us to post officer safety bulletins. A lot of it's law enforcement sensitive, so we're constantly trying to turn all of those bulletins over to make sure that we appropriately protect information that's law enforcement sensitive. But again, that serves as many as 6 officers at once with 2 workstations, again, making it a challenging environment to work in. This is the third area. I'm sure many of you are familiar if you've come in to get a pistol permit. This is where our administrative assistant does a lot of great things for us. She's doing things like, managing the firearms licensing, handling records requests, even assisting with dispatching officers. It does serve as a backup area for officers to use workstations, and that's that location. But understand, again, it's all adjacent to those 2 rooms that we've had suspects and victims in the 2 rooms, and unfortunately the walls are paper thin, and we're trying to protect and guard against people overhearing things. Even if it's not a suspect and victim scenario, even when people are in there for administrative things like a pistol permit, we're trying to answer calls and deal with very delicate and sensitive situations without having that information be overheard. Again, very, very difficult to do. So beyond the equipment storage, we talked about the workspace for employees to work in the public access areas we work with. Now, evidence. We're, like everything else, we're beyond capacity. The lower picture there is a picture of the evidence room. That's a 5x7 room. We're beyond capacity, so to compensate for that, we now have evidence in different parts. That's where we keep active cases and other sensitive evidence, but it's beyond capacity. The other issue with that is it goes against best practices because town hall employees literally can walk right up to the outer door. Now those doors are secure, we're compliant by law, but it's certainly not a best practice we could have evidence in there that's extremely important to a felony case, and there's either a locker or one locked door, and any civilian employees can walk right up to it. So I'm sure nobody here is familiar with this path, but when we arrest somebody and we bring them in, so the cruiser parking is right in front. I have to say, it's a difficult process. So a lot of times prisoners are compliant, and that's wonderful, but sometimes they're not. And we have to get them from the cruiser, and we have to go through multiple doors, 5 actually, down a set of stairs. We're walking right up Main Street. Sometimes there's children out there. We try to clear the path. We're walking right by, citizens. And again, best case scenario, it's a cooperative walk, but sometimes it's not. So it's just not safe. And of course, the officers are always on guard trying to control the situation. And we also get inside town hall and we're intermingled with civilian town hall employees. And it's just not fair to them. It's not fair to the prisoner. Because, if we can do that without marching them up Main Street, obviously that would be a better scenario. So this will paint the picture that I just tried to describe. As you see, there's where we're parking. We march up Main Street, through the town hall front doors, through the lobby, downstairs, through a door at the bottom, down a hall, through another door, and then we arrive in the booking and cell area. And I don't want to belabor this, but I'm just trying to accurately paint the picture where officers are trying to control movement, unlock doors, go downstairs. Again, it's a difficult situation. So along those same lines, even when not dealing with prisoners, we have security issues. We have cruisers that are unsecure, so at the end of our cruiser rotations, when the cruiser comes offline, officers have to take the long guns out of the cruisers because we're parking them out back. We don't want to leave long guns off camera, unprotected. So again, officers are marching up Main Street with a rifle and a shotgun, 2 long guns to put them away at the end of their shifts. It's not ideal. We're then walking through town hall, and as we come in to address any issue, you're going to see in the bottom photo, we have to walk by without really having a chance to assess if we're called back to the station. We're now in this small confined area to come in and deal with whatever's waiting for us, and we can't even get into the station without walking through whoever happens to be in the lobby. And the same thing with our civilian administrative assistant. If she happens to leave when she comes back, she's got to walk through. Now, mind you, most of that is just administrative business, admittedly. It's perfectly okay, but there are those times where, you know, the situation is difficult. So the other issue is we're spread out through town hall. Again, going back to the perspective of a victim, if you're dealing with an awful situation, you might not want to come in and see 14 people from the town hall, you're talking to people, you just, you know, you're upset and you just want to come in and file a report. We recognize that and I understand, you know, it's challenging when people have to come in to make a report and have to deal with, you know, walking past people that they know and you know, it's not easy for them. So the issue of our work area being mixed throughout town hall is a significant issue. So the operational areas spread out, creating some, what I would say, safety issues for the officers, also for the public, because people can inadvertently come upon police matters. You know, we might be dealing with a situation that somebody's coming in to report something, it spills out in the hallway, and now we're in the hallway, which is right outside the police door there in the upper right photo. So those are all examples of challenges we're dealing with. Moving on to the health and welfare. So, as articulated by these pictures, these are some of the issues that we're dealing with. So in the basement, in the cell area, we have significant moisture issue, mildew issue. That bottom picture there, those are floor vents. We've actually had water coming through mixed with some sewer. You know, the upper right photo, if I can get this laser work, those are where waters come up through the floor in wet springs. That's in the men's locker room. You know, one of the storage areas that we use to store equipment in firearms is in an old bank vault, and this is, you know, the kind of moisture and environment that those are stored in. We've got no place to properly clean and store other sensitive equipment. Our male locker room can only be accessed by going through the holding area. Now, I've had to write special policies and procedures. Again, goes against every best practice. You know, to have a firearm introduced into an area where there's prisoners, it's not good. So the officers have to make sure that nobody's actively being booked when they're coming in on shift and coming in to change and you know, bringing a live firearm into that environment. So I talked about some of the interim remedies that we've come up with, and I just wanted to give you some examples just to show you and demonstrate what we're working with. Some examples, you know, we didn't have enough room to put multiple desks, there just wasn't space, so a couple officers got together and just put some counters in with 2x4 legs, and that's how we came up with some computer workstations in one of our main working areas. Our break room, which is the interview room, we just threw a piece of wood on top of a mini fridge and called that a day. Some of the file storage, we just didn't have space to put some of the technology equipment, so we just threw a piece of countertop on that. Our administrative assistant was having to fingerprint people, so I built a fingerprint station upstairs, so obviously we don't want to bring people downstairs that are just there for their fingerprints for FID cards or pistol permits. We don't want to bring them into the cell area, so we created that. This is the booking station. Again, an example of officers coming together and building that themselves, just because we had just such a bad setup down there. It wasn't safe for us to book prisoners because there was a desk that could be pushed and thrown around. Another example in the safe where an officer built some segmented storage, just so we'd have a better way to store things in there. And finally, I move on to the largest liability that we have. So the town currently has 3 cells. All 3 of those cells are downstairs. The officer's working space are upstairs. So we monitor prisoners through audio, video. We monitor them remotely, and every 15 minutes or 30 minutes, depending on what we're dealing with, you go down and physically do a cell check. The entire time, we're watching them on the monitor and audio as well, so we can hear what's going on. But for that, I can't afford to take 2 officers off the road. So the officer, every 15 minutes, has to run downstairs, physically check the prisoner, log the cell check, and run back upstairs. And so during that time, there's this very short window where nobody's watching the prisoner, which is obviously a bad thing. Again, we're doing what we can to make, we're compliant by state law, and we're compliant in any regulations. But having said that, it's just a terrible situation to have officers so far from prisoners. There is no sprinkler system either, and it's a single exit out of that area. So, being on a separate floor, having no sprinklers, an antiquated fire monitoring system, a single exit, and then all of what you saw us, that's what EMS has to deal with when we call them, because there are times, unfortunately, where we have to call EMS, and then EMS has to do the same thing to access the prisoners, making it, again, very difficult. And then finally, I will say that we fail our inspections annually. The Department of Public Health inspects us. We do our very best, we do our level best to address whatever the failures are. But it's a recurring theme. So, all right. So with that, I think I'm going to hand this over to Brian, so he can discuss the needs assessment. Brian's been a remarkable asset during this process. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Chief. Just as an introduction, I'm Brian Humes. I represent the firm of Jakunsky Humes Architects. And I have been designing public safety facilities, police, fire, EMS for over 30 years. And in those 30 years, I have over 90 facilities that I can put my name onto. We did respond specifically to this request for proposal the town of Lee put out for architectural design services, and because this is what we specialize in, we did respond to the request for proposals, and we're hired about 1.5 years ago now. And we've been working with the town of Lee, working with the departments, and our feasibility study was a 4-part process. The first part was to determine needs. And this is a conclusion of what we have for the fire and EMS headquarters, just to talk about needs. A space needs assessment is always the first part in our feasibility study. Before we can even put any pencil to paper and draw any floor plans, we need to know what is needed. And because I have experience doing this, I can bring our experience to the table for a conversation, but it was really a conversation that we needed to have with staff. I can't just take another public safety facility that I've done in another community and move it here and say we're done. Every facility is specifically designed for the needs of that community. And that's why we needed involvement. We were here and talked with fire and fire staff specifically about if you were to look at your facility's needs for now and into the next 20 years, 40 years, we need to determine what it is we're going to build, what it is we're going to design. And I call these the puzzle pieces. We need to put the pieces of the puzzle down first to figure out how we're going to put together the puzzle. When we sat with fire, you can see some categories that we concluded were the needs of the department. We stressed from the very first day we met with staff that we have to eliminate the wants, the nice to have, the over the top, but we have to, if this is going to be a successful project for the community, we have to boil this down to needs. Yes, future growth is factored into these needs, but I can tell you tonight that the reason that you're seeing square footages that you're seeing is not because of future growth. It's because of such inadequate current facilities. They stress some of the liabilities. And I've been in these facilities throughout the Commonwealth for 30 years, and it still surprises me that I walk into conditions that you've just heard about. A lot of you probably don't know the inside of these facilities, whether it's fire or police. I've seen a lot of them, and they are not overstressing the liabilities that are existing in your facilities today. So we are proposing needs for the facility that they currently cannot satisfy. When we look at a total net square footage, it's 10,960, and this is for the police headquarters. You see the categories that we have. 10,960 is net square footage. And when you saw the last one for fire, it's net square footage. That's the usable space within the rooms. If I look at this cafeteria has a net square footage and it's all the space within the walls. But we have to then take a gross square footage to determine what's the out-to-out square footage of the facility. We have to take into account wall thicknesses, corridors, circulation space, stairs, elevators if they're elevators. These are also taking up square footage. So while we come up with a net square footage of just over 10,000 square feet, we are anticipating a gross square footage of 1480 with that. We talked to staff from fire and police. We also conducted needs assessments for building safety and land use. And we also talked to Tri-Town Health. So we talked to 4 agencies. The proposal you see tonight is going to be for 3 of those 4.
Thanks, Brian. Before we go on to the new building, we have one more section to highlight tonight, which is DPW. And things kind of fell into place when we were looking for locations, which we'll talk about in a minute, where we were able to hopefully secure a new location for the DPW as well. But I'm going to turn it over to Zach and Lenny just to talk a little bit about their current space, which is down near the post office.
Hello, everyone. So there's 2 DPW buildings that are occupied now. We have the Kwanzaa Hut, which was built in the 40s. That was the original DPW facility. As the community grew, 40 years later, well, it's in the early 1970s is when the Butler building was built. Since then, we've grown even more. So it satisfied a need back then. What it isn't today. We can fit everything in there, but it's like a Rubik's Cube. Everything is really tight. So we don't have areas for the machinery maintenance, staff areas, and it's run down. I mean, there's a life expectancy on a Butler building, and we've already met that. Just like you would for bridges and stuff. There's a life expectancy. Zach, you want to talk about the condition inside?
Yeah. Zach Sorrentino with the Highway Department. The main thing we've run into a problem with is our storage space around the building. We're only limited to a 10-wheeler load of material around the building because of being so close to the river. So we're only allowed to store X amount of material. So during water breaks or whatnot, we're actually calling in Tonalino stone or Lennoxdale, opening up the plant to get extra stone to a job site. And we're miscellaneous storage for all the other departments in town. We store stuff for Kathy Hall and the Youth Commission inside the Kwanzaa huts. So everything that we have is stored on top of each other and inside each other just to make the room we need. And then if we got to work on a truck or move a truck in or out, we got to almost empty all the bays just to get the mechanic room for working on the vehicles. And some of the fire engines are difficult to turn into our mechanic area for what we're working on. So just our space where we are now is functional, but it's not to the proper size of what we need to be safe and working around.
Thanks, Zach. And the other kind of piece of this puzzle is another building that we have in town, which has a lot of deferred maintenance, which is the Uraldi building. So you can see a couple pictures there. There's a nice shot of the wiring in the Uraldi building and the exterior of it. There's a number of issues there. And again, the Uraldi building as well as the EMS building, tons of deferred maintenance in both of those places. So when we started looking at locations, one thing we heard was a lot of people wanted to keep public safety downtown, but where would we be able to put that? Well, we solve a number of problems when we redevelop that Araldi DPW area, which is kind of a blighted area of the east side of Main, or west side rather, of Main Street. So this is another piece of the puzzle for putting the new public safety building. So what are we planning to do? Well, the Araldi building, which I just showed you, would be demolished. Tri-Town Health, we did, as Brian mentioned, look at whether we wanted to include them in the new building. We did reach out to Lennox and Stockbridge of what that was going to cost, and they both towns have space to take Tri-Town Health over there rather than the extra $2 million per town if we included them in this new building. So they would move to Lennox or Stockbridge. The EMS building, which is in pretty bad shape, as Chief Brown mentioned, would also be demolished. That would open up space on the north end of Main Street for more green space, parking in the back part if needed. But more importantly, as we look into the central fire station, as Chief Brown said, it's a really cool building. It's a historical building. We don't want to lose that building. The idea would be to form a reuse committee. I already have some people that said they're interested in that. But that reuse committee would also kind of look at what should we do? Do we need more parking? Do we need more green space, et cetera, where the EMS building is. And the DPW garage, which is about at least 20 years past its expected lifespan, would also be demolished. And another, again, key piece of this puzzle was we have a really good opportunity, which doesn't come up very often, to move the DPW to a facility on Route 102. Many of you know where the old Daily Trucking and Casella building is across from Meadow Farm. That building came up for sale. If we were to build that structure right now, under prevailing wage as a municipal project, we probably pay twice as much as what it would cost, and it's pretty much ready to move in. We can talk a little more about it later, but three-phase electricity, oil, water separators, more square footage than what we have now in a building that's 8 or 10 years old. Police space, of course, in Town Hall would be repurposed. We have a couple offices like the vet agent that would move from Araldi over to Town Hall. Would be great to have a smaller meeting room when the courtroom is not available. Also, right now we've got building and land use connected together for lack of space, but we could separate those land use into its own office again for the planning and zoning boards as it used to be. And then record storage. Unfortunately, even with all of the electronic means we have, the state still makes us keep a lot of paperwork. So we have records going back to the 1700s that we still have to keep on paper by law. So as you can imagine, over the years that built up quite a bit of space. So basically, after we looked at everything, we had a few highlights of the feasibility study. Unsafe conditions in some areas, deteriorating structures, a lot of deferred maintenance. You can look at the Araldi building, perfect example of that. And then an overall lack of space for police, fire, EMS, and DPW, and certainly no room for any future expansion. So the next thing we did, and I'm going to ask Chief Brown to talk a little more about this, was to look at some different locations. We looked at the whole town. But we kind of tried to get everything in between the sort of the Route 102 corridor closer to Big Y up to sort of the end of Main Street, which is based on call time. And Ryan can tell you a little more about that.
So when we started looking at where should we build a building, the original thought was we can do this in one building and it should be at the crossroads of town. We've done some other consulting work to determine that one building isn't going to work for Lee. It's too big. Brian did a lot of legwork with geomapping and looking and saying, where's that? Where's this? What's this? And we looked at, I think, a total of 14 sites throughout town and whittled it down to these final 4 as what we thought would be suitable in size and suitable in location. As time moved forward, we found out that floodplains in the town of Lee becomes a major issue. The one site, the first site that we thought would be the greatest site in the world is not available, and that was made very clear to us. The second site that we thought would be super duper, the cost to do compensatory storage is what you have to do when you take grass and make it hardscape would be counter-prohibitive to actually doing the project. It would cost so much. Another site came up, we did the dance, we found out that, no, that's not available after all. The top site up in the area of the athletic field, it wasn't the athletic field, don't worry Kathy, but in the area of the athletic field, it turned out that the site looks great from the sky, but it's unsuitable in size, and it does have a flood canal built into the site in case the upper reservoir has outflow, which kind of ruled that one out too. About 2 months ago, we kind of all put our hands up in the air and said, this is going nowhere fast. And then all of a sudden, the 102 site became available for the DPW. We called Brian up and said, hey Brian, what do you think of this site? He did his work, and we came up in a very fast pace, taking all the legwork that we've done over the past year and a half, moving things around, and came up with the current site we're proposing tonight. Brian, do you want to talk about the site selection, or did I do okay? I did okay.
Right.
So the site we came in with tonight had a couple of components. Well, the DPW's there, but we have a place for them. The Araldi building is there, but everyone that's officed there potentially has a place to go. It's the only public parking in downtown that's actually owned and maintained by the town. However, Brian was able to design the building around the hardscape places, not impacting the major parking area. And the little piece of the pie was, I think it's called Lot 32, which we were able to talk to the owners, and they were happy to consider parting with it, which led us to today with a location that would be in downtown, a location that would be suitable to build on. It's not out of the floodplain by much, but it's out of the floodplain by enough. And if anyone's wondering what happens to Station 2, because of the size of the town, it stays there. So we still keep an engine in the South Village, but the proposal brings all of our day-to-day operations over into downtown. The reason why this site worked really well is another project you may have read about in the paper is we're talking to Stockbridge about a possibility of combining services. And part of that process, we did a response time study. And we found that if we base everything on an optimistic 6-minute response, coming from downtown positively impacts the majority of Lee. Coming from 102, not as much. So downtown, because of the main transportation, because of the fingers of town kind of moving up towards the Dale and moving out towards Upper Stockbridge, downtown was the site that works best for us. If you look on the map, it's hard to see, I know, but everything that's blue becomes 6 minutes from headquarters. And if you look at, can I steal the pointer? Anyone that knows Lee knows that this is state forest, this is state forest. So the majority of the populated portion of Lee, due to this response survey, is well served by being right there. And that was a major contributing factor to us wanting to stay downtown.
Thank you, Chief. And now I'll turn it back over to Brian, who will talk about the plans for the new building. So, as you can see, this is the overhead design, basically going between the post office and Dresser Hall.
Chris?
Yeah.
Has a traffic study been done yet on how you're going to get the fire apparatus from the new building onto Main Street itself?
Yeah. Defer to Ryan on that. He has.
So, Mr. Forrest, your question is how are we gonna get the fire apparatus from Railroad Street to Main Street? We do it every day right now with our ambulances. They respond out of a garage that comes onto Railroad Street. We haven't done a formal survey, and we may have to, but I have been counting, and every day in between 6 and 9 53-foot tractor trailers do access Railroad Street and exit Railroad Street to deliver to the rail yard. They don't seem to have much of a problem doing that. And the biggest fire truck that we currently own is smaller than the biggest delivery vehicle that Dresser Hall, which would be our next door neighbors if we move here, delivers with. And they don't seem to have an absorbent problem exiting Elm Street or Railroad Street onto Main Street. And none of those other vehicles have red lights and noisemakers, which do give us a small advantage, but I don't see it being a huge issue because we do it every day with our ambulances, on average 5.2 times a day. We may have to do a traffic survey. Right now, I don't see it being a huge problem. I know the DPW guys could probably tell you how hard it is to pull out onto Main Street with a DPW truck. They're not that much bigger than the fire trucks.
Well, what happens in the summer, when you have summer traffic, the Main Street full?
Currently,
It's
the same thing.
So if we have summer traffic, our call people still have to maneuver that traffic to get to the fire station. And instead of coming out of Railroad Street or coming out of Elm Street, they have to come out of the fire station onto that same Main Street that has summer traffic. So, the traffic may be somewhat of an issue, but we should be worried about the day that the traffic isn't there, because that's what our community is surviving on.
Well, just to make sure we cover all of our.
Yeah, no,
One other-
very good question, Dave.
Question, yes.
I just was wondering if you considered, and this may be very unpopular, some of the town parks that we have, like, for example, on Marble Street, it looks like there's a big piece of land there, and I know some of it's owned by private people, but there seems like there's a pretty good size park there, and you wouldn't have the issues of Main Street at that location. I just was wondering if you considered that, or that's just like really not even a good place.
Yeah, so I think I understand the question. One of the things we looked at was to stay on a major corridor, Route 20, Route 102, for accessibility, so not to go into a residential area like that. And if you had anything else to add.
That's basically what I was gonna say. If we put the fire station at the end of Robert Street, where I live, where there's an expansive town park, now we have to bring our call and volunteers into densely populated residential neighborhoods, and eventually we still have to drive on Main Street. So I think, the traffic on Main Street is gonna be a factor no matter where we are. I'm working on a map of what we call hot zones, and I will tell you, Upper Laurel Street, we were there, I think 5 times yesterday. So no matter where we are, we're gonna have to go on Main Street. We're gonna have to go on Housatonic Street. It's the best way to get across town.
So I'll give you my opinion on the site. As it was mentioned, we looked at a lot of sites. I got to know Lee pretty well.
14.
Where you want to site a public safety facility is in an area which has visibility. So that brings us to a major corridor. We do want to avoid residential properties and residential areas because these facilities at night have to be lit up with site lighting. The lights don't go off. This is a 24-hour a day, 365 days a year facility. So it's not quiet at night. They can't predict when the noise is going to happen, when the trucks have to roll out. They can't predict when the call might come for 911 assistance. So the noise can be generated from this facility at any time during the day or night. So we want visibility, not just for the lead, but if somebody's traveling through town, you have visitors coming through town, they want to be able to find emergency services. Somebody needing medical attention might actually drive to the fire station to get medical attention instead of waiting for an ambulance to come to them. They need to have accessibility and visibility. Middle of the night, somebody might want to find the police facility for directions, for information. They need a visible location for that. So with all of the sites that we were looking at key components that would work. Of all of the sites that I looked at, I feel that the one we resolved, this site on Railroad Street, is the best site that we looked at, and it was the last site we looked at. So yeah, we had proposals for different sites. They always had some sort of drawback. This one has amenities. Some of the amenities that you have is that it is downtown. And whenever we're working with a community that has facilities downtown, there's a strong desire from the business community to stay downtown. For all those businesses downtown, having a public safety complex with police and fire services in a downtown central business district gives that whole business district a feeling of security. Real or imagined, it's a sense of security that the police department are right there. So if anybody is trying to cause a disturbance, cause something that's happening to downtown businesses, they'd think twice knowing that the police department was right around the corner. So this location is an amenity for the central business district and for all the businesses that are along Main Street or adjacent to these properties. The other thing that we find is urban renewal. If we build something in a blighted property, the properties around that start to come up as far as appearance and repair. So this is a little urban renewal project, stimulus project that we see has an effect on neighboring properties if this is put there. Another amenity this site has, it has the Housatonic River. It has a small gazebo that's established there. We saw that as an amenity to enhance the gazebo and make this more of a park setting that can be part of this complex, so it can be a community place to appreciate green space. And while the river is here, the river is at a lower elevation at this location. So with the other properties that we looked at, the river was almost at grade with those properties, so it was creating a floodplain concern. When we're designing these facilities, we have a lot of things to be concerned about. Building codes, mechanical codes, electrical codes, plumbing codes, all of the facilities that you've seen tonight, existing conditions, they met the code requirements for when those facilities were constructed. But they do not meet the current code requirements for a new facility. So anything that we do today to get permitted under this project has to meet all current codes, all current standards. We also are interested in accreditation standards for these facilities. Do these facilities, or will they be constructed to assist the community and the departments for state or national accreditation standards? There's energy code requirements. So we have to be very energy efficient with these buildings and build in energy efficiency, something that your current facilities lack woefully as far as energy efficiency to heat and cool those buildings right now, whether it's DPW or the fire station or EMS facility. Tremendous heat loss and tremendous energy loss in those buildings that we are having to address in new construction. So we can look at sustainable ideas in building these buildings. And lastly, but not to be overlooked, is the Massachusetts Building Code calls these facilities essential facilities. Police stations, fire stations, hospitals. These are essential facilities according to the building code that have to withstand natural disasters. Now, knowing that we have more and more natural disasters that are in the news, the building code recognizes the fact that these buildings have to withstand these natural disasters because these are your emergency responders. So if there is a natural disaster, these buildings are the ones that have to remain intact. So we have to do some things special to these buildings because they're labeled, according to the code, as essential facilities. So we have to harden them. We have to design them to a greater degree of snow load, greater degree of wind load, greater degree of seismic restraint. So all of these things, before we can even start construction, we have to build into the design. Now, yes, this is impacting the overall cost of the project, but we don't have a choice in that. The building code mandates it, and the building code is now addressing this on a statewide basis, not just for your community, but this is any community wanting to do a building which includes police, fire, EMS. These are now your essential facilities. We have also some synergy when we're trying to do one building instead of two buildings. We looked at solutions where we could put a fire station here, we could put a police station there. You saw earlier our space needs assessment. We had about 14,000 square feet for the police, we had 27,000 square feet for fire. That's what we would be looking to do with separate facilities. This facility is at 37,000. If you total the two before, we were at about 42,000 square feet. We've gone from a 42,000 square feet total down to a 37,000 square foot total. The 37 is because the synergy that we can build in with some shared facilities between the two departments. They can share spaces instead of building duplicate spaces in separate facilities. So that, yes, we are finding an overall reduction in total square footage to bring you the solution that you see tonight at just a little over 37,000 square feet. We've also looked at the community as far as the architecture. A lot of communities are saying, don't give me a flat roof. Give me a pitched roof. Give me something that fits our community aesthetic that we, if we're funding this, we need to be proud of. So we did look at that. And we felt a facility with pitched roofs, more colonial, traditional architecture would support the downtown, would support the community, would give you less stress as far as flat roof construction. We have a masonry base, which is going to protect the bottom of the wall from any snow ice conditions. So the bottom of it is masonry. From there up, it's all fiber cement siding, PVC trim. It's maintenance free, it's long lasting, it's durable, but it's also at a cost effective way to give you that colonial appearance with traditional windows, shutters. This is showing the entry location of the police department. This is a community room in the middle here where we have community meeting space. We call it community meeting space, but it solves the synergy between both of the departments needing meeting space. We've also built in emergency operations center components. So this not only could be your public safety complex, this becomes your emergency operations center if needed for the town. Apparatus bays. You saw the narrow doors that were on the current facility. These doors are all 14 feet high, 14 feet wide. You're no longer limiting your acquisition of apparatus equipment that can get in and out of these facilities. So this is meeting road standards for height and clearance for width. And on the right-hand side, at the end gable, is for the fire department and fire needs. This would be the entrance to the fire station. We have similar architectural entrance components. So if you're going to the fire station or going to the police station, they'll have a similar architectural feel as far as windows. This gives you just a rendering of what the front entrance could look like for the fire department, the masonry base, clapboard siding. But these are developed to only a schematic level of development. These are pictures. These are not yet ready for construction. There's a lot of work that has to be done. This is just a very schematic. Will it fit? How will it look? How much will it cost? We're orienting this. Railroad Street would be to the top of the plan. Consolati Way to the right. The gazebo in the bottom right. Everything that you see in red is the main floor of the fire station. We have a couple areas that are in tan color. Those are offices that can be utilized by building safety and land use. So they could be fire and offices for building safety on the left-hand side with its own entrance. The areas in gray are public areas for public circulation. We have a similar public entrance to the police department with areas for public access, public accommodation, public restrooms, and access into a green space which is shared, which would be the meeting space. The fire department has access through the bays to the meeting space. The area in blue is the police department. They have access into the meeting space. But also the community has access into that meeting space. Some primary functions of the police department on this floor. At the lower right, there are 2 garage bays, and those are called sally ports. If you're not familiar with a sally port is, a sally port is a secured garage bay. The chief talked about the walk up Main Street. There's no longer a walk. Officers can bring cruisers into the facility, doors would close, and in a sally port, it's a safe transportation from vehicle to building. So once the garage doors are closed, then the officer has a more safe transport from the cars directly into areas of prisoner processing and prisoner detention. These are things that are being done throughout the state right now. Throughout the state. There's nothing in this proposal which is really unique to modern policing or modern firefighting. They haven't asked for the moon. What they've asked for is what they need to perform their task and what they need to promote officer safety, officer wellness, fire department safety, and fire department wellness. These are really things that are beneficial and required in any project that we look to do. We do have a second floor, and the police department has a second floor, and on this second floor are areas for locker rooms for patrol use. They are administrative areas. There's areas for investigation, but there's also areas that we had talked about for confidentiality and security. Evidence. Evidence needs to be handled properly. Chain of custody. The officers in town could do the best job possible, but if evidence isn't handled properly, then there's a liability that whatever that was related to might be jeopardized. We also have a green space on this floor. Green space is shared space. So this is an area for physical fitness and physical wellness to promote the safety and health of both the staff of the fire department and the staff of the police department. So they will have an area for wellness and fitness. We have mezzanines that flank the upper bays of the apparatus bays, because the apparatus bays are about 1.5 stories tall. And then we have areas on the left for firefighters, bunk rooms, day rooms, kitchen, and all of the second floor being locker space and restrooms and showers. So they have a place where they can utilize for their shift and for their 24-hour shift. Could be on this upper floor for the fire department. The lower section in here is a training tower. Historically, you've seen the fire departments with the very tall towers being hose drying towers. Primarily, they would be for hose drying. Well, in today's day and age, you don't really have to hang a hose to dry because hose technology has progressed. But there's still a component of that tower that Lee would like to utilize for training. It's interior training for firefighters, and it's also ladder training on the outside of the building for putting ladders up, using ladder drills and ladder training. So this is really a use that could, one, support hose drying, but two, also support training and proper training for the fire department.
Thank you, Brian. So, as we've mentioned, the new facility would have modern fire and police facilities, community space. It would hold 75 to 100 people. It would maintain the gazebo area and riverfront area, actually enhance those. We would still maintain the bulk of the public parking that's there, have room for our building department, and also room looking out into the next 20 to 40 years. Public Works, as we mentioned, would be moving in this plan to Route 102. So this is the building if you're not familiar with it. But again, it is almost turnkey, ready to go. Square footage wise, as much as actually a little bit more than the current garage plus the Quonset hut combined, but also a much more modern facility, office space, locker room space, also bathrooms, showers in there, as well as three-phase electricity, oil water separators in the drains. We have worked in a budget to pave the area coming in here and also to add a salt shed. So what many people probably don't realize is when we can't store much salt in the current location. So in a snow emergency, the trucks and the payloaders mobilize and actually move to 102 to the sewer treatment plant to get their salt there. So this would be, as kind of Zach and Lenny mentioned before, an area where we could keep a lot more materials than what's kept currently. So I don't know if you guys wanted to talk more about this, Zach or Lenny, but basically, secure yard, fenced in. We have no secure yard currently. Increased square footage and yard space for salt and materials. And also room for expansion. There's plenty of room if we wanted to add a cold storage building later for I know we have various groups, the Greener Gateway, Youth Commission, Cultural Commission that all has need for storage space that's currently in the Quonset hut. So our overall benefits, and we really look at this as a win-win-win situation. A new DPW facility, a new police and fire facility, and a revitalization of the west side of downtown. So new opportunities for the central fire station. We've had many different ideas for things there, but again, an opportunity to add some new features there. We would remove a number of poor, outdated, energy efficient structures, replacing them with much more efficient structures. They meet goals currently being discussed in our master plan, our hazard mitigation plan, and our municipal vulnerability plan. And again, green energy technologies, and this would be our first major capital project in over 20 years. This school right up here was the last building that the town funded. So the approval process, first thing that's going to happen is a town meeting. It needs to get a 2/3 debt exclusion vote. The reason for that is we do need to bond the money for this. We need to get a bond, and that requires a 2/3 vote of town meeting to exclude it from Proposition 2.5. If it gets 2/3 vote at town meeting, which we have, the board is going to be posting a warrant hopefully next week for December 6th in the auditorium right here at Lee Middle High School. It would then go to a majority vote at the town election, which would happen in winter or spring 2024. We do have a primary coming up and then our town election. So either of those could be potential elections for that. And that could allow things to start as early as fall of 2024, which obviously would start with demolition, and moving DPW would be the first phase of that. So the funding part, we will need to get a bond for this. We have already started to look into economic development grants. We have various departments that can fund certain portions of the project. Some of it through MEMA, FEMA, community economic development, because we're fixing an area of downtown. The state also has Senate Bill 1599 in progress right now. One of the things that Massachusetts does not have is building money for public safety facilities or other municipal buildings. There is the school building fund, and as many of you know, when you're building a school building, a portion of that is paid for by the state. There currently does not exist that for other municipal buildings. However, this bill is actually intended for public safety buildings. So we are optimistic that having this project ready to go, we'd be able to get part of those funds if that gets through the legislature. The other thing we are looking at, we have money. A lot of people have said, are we going to use any of our settlement funds from Restive River? And the answer is no, we don't want to use those funds. No one is really ready to do anything with the money coming in from the settlement fund. However, we have looked at what if we applied the interest from that. The interest of $26 million adds up to over $1 million a year with current interest rates. So if you take all those costs into play, construction is just under $23 million. We have a large contingency built in there currently, just to give some options for what we might find in that area where the DPW is and the Araldi building. There's about just under $6 million in contingency that may or may not need to be used. We estimate the soft costs, which is land acquisition, architects, engineering, communications, furniture and fixtures, project manager, to be just under $4.5 million. We have $3.5 million for the DPW, which includes acquisition of the property, as well as money set aside again for salt shed and paving there, bringing the total project to just under $36.7 million. So what people probably want to know is how is that going to affect taxes? So if we, worst case scenario, we apply no additional money to that, just that $37 million, $36 million, that is a tax impact on the average single-family home of about $312 per tax bill, which equates to $624 per year. If town meeting chooses to apply interest, again, interest only, I want to make sure we stress that. If we just use the interest from the settlement funds that we're receiving and apply that each year towards the bond payment, That brings the tax impact to $173 for average single-family home, or $346 for the year. So in case you're interested in finding out more, the fire and police and EMS are going to have tours available if you want to see the conditions of the existing facilities. November 16th from 4 to 7, they will be open and available to show you those facilities. The other thing, before we conclude and go into questions, is a lot of people said, what if we don't do this? Well, the police station right now is failing in a number of ways. So if we did a standalone police station, that on its own would be in the $10 to $12 million range. The EMS building, which not many people liked even when it was functional, would be an extensive renovation to get that just safe enough to be in. It's held up by emergency supports right now. The Araldi building, I actually had a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor the other day, and they were asking a number of town administrators about their current municipal buildings, and I said if the health department wasn't in the Araldi building, they would probably be condemning it. So she kind of laughed, but it is true, it's in pretty rough shape. So there's going to be a lot of deferred maintenance if we want to continue that. We would continue with our custom-built fire trucks. We would continue DPW at its current location. Whoops. So at this point, open it up for questions. We have the select board here. If there's any questions specifically from them, of course, the chiefs, the DPW. Any questions? Yes. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Peter Glove. I'm the chair of the Master Plan Committee, and the Master Plan Committee is 14 people who have been meeting for over a year. Some of the members are here scattered around the room. I just want to report that although our deliberations are not completed, we've been working for a year, yes, it's true. We'll be expecting to finish out at the end of the calendar year, but we're getting close on a lot of things. And we discussed in a meeting on Monday night a section of our master plan draft. It's called Public Services and Facilities. The first two things we listed, we decided unanimously, the first two things to list are fix the police station, fix the fire station. Those are number one and number two from this committee of lead residents. The other thing that's mentioned, and it hasn't resulted in a vote, is that several members of the committee have frequently mentioned the need for more meeting space, a place where people can go and have a public or even a non-profit organization meeting. So I congratulate the select board and the town administration for anticipating what we thought we were inventing, this idea that we thought we had. You need to ask how we're going to be following your parade. But thank you for taking the initiative.
Thank you, Peter. Gail? Yeah.
I just have, I like the idea. I don't like the location that it is, but I like the idea. And I just wanted to ask you, the upstairs, is that where you have all the shelves, that's part of the decontamination area? Is that?
Oh, for the fire department?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if Brian or Ryan
Is
wants
the
to.
upstairs part of the decontamination?
Yeah, I believe the
or downstairs?
decontamination is downstairs, but.
Yeah, for mass decontamination, that would be off of the, on the main level, near the training tower location. But it would be a place for returning apparatus, returning firefighters to enter directly into.
It's right there.
No, up in the
Oh,
top
there,
over there, yeah.
There's a door that they can enter directly into a decontamination room specifically for mass decontamination. So it's not something that you'd have to go through the facility or into the facility or even to the second floor. It's something that we want to capture right from the exterior into this area.
And then, where are the ambulances?
In the fire station.
In the same bay area?
Yeah, they're included with the fire truck bays, yeah. Cornelia, I think?
Sorry, I came in late, so I might not have heard, I might have missed some of this, so I apologize. Originally, I heard that this was going to be a shared project with Stratford, is that still yet?
Well, we are still working with Stockbridge. One of the things we showed on the response maps was in that process, we are working with one other consultant, JD Consulting, which does response times and that sort of thing. We quickly found out that one facility with 2 towns, even if it was located on 102, was not going to give us the response times we needed. So we are still talking to them. We are still looking at sharing some services, but that doesn't impact this location. You know, we're still in those talks with them. So.
Question, can I just?
Sure.
So that in this, we open up space in the town hall, some of the ideas of that.
Yes, we have a couple offices in the Araldi building that would move over there. We did talk about another small committee meeting space, record storage space, and the other big one was the planning and zoning would go back to having their own space, which is now shared.
And South Lee Fire Department,
Yeah, that would remain intact as is. Yeah.
and the old building now,
The central fire station, the town plans to keep, but we would have a reuse committee for looking at some new opportunities. I know there's a number of different groups that could use some space in there, from historical society to the youth commission, etc. So we would form a committee on what we can do, but would definitely want to keep that historic structure.
what about the health department?
Right, and they would move to Lennox or Stockbridge. Both towns have expressed an interest in doing that and have space available. So,
If we separated out this project, did not buy that other building on 102 for the DPW, how much saved?
so the building on 102 is $3 million, and we have another $500,000 for the salt shed and paving.
Say that again?
No, it's $3 million plus the money for paving and the salt shed.
But we couldn't do this if we
But
don't.
we wouldn't have the space if we don't move DPW though.
Maybe go back to the overview. Go back to the aerial,
Oh, okay.
because we need all that space.
This one?
No,
Right there.
the DPW.
Yeah.
That's key.
Right. This is the right.
Do you have a lock on your car? That's where I can borrow it.
Oh.
It might be from me.
Yeah, if we don't move DPW, there's not enough space for this facility. I could catch you after, if you want. John? Yeah.
John Davidson, West Park Street. A question and a comment. The projection of the impact on taxes does not take into account any projection of future growth within the town that might minimize that in any way, such as
Right.
the mill project.
Right.
Worst case scenario.
Right, that's correct, yeah. That does not look at any new growth. So the mill project would bring in some new growth for sure. So that's really our worst case scenario. We wanted to come out and say that this is worst case if we get no grants, if we get no new growth, if we get nothing but our bond payment, that's what it's going to be. Yeah.
And a comment on the traffic. Has any consideration been given to with the ambulance building comes down, creating an access to Main Street
Right.
just for emergency vehicles out of this facility?
Yeah, that actually has come up, and it's definitely something that is feasible to do. There is a road there right now, could be continued, so that is one of the things we've talked about. I don't know if you wanted to mention any more about that, but.
Yeah, we've had conversations regarding, if we come out and head to the left, and then, even if it's a parking lot, have a designated lane through there to access Main Street in an area where the field of vision is much better. It's been conversation. We really haven't really investigated it because I don't think we're there yet, but it's a great idea, and I think that, you know, we've talked about Elm Street, we've talked about Railroad Street, we've talked about the existing thoroughfare that kind of is the unofficial road from Dresser Hall to Main Street. So yes, it's a consideration that we haven't exploited yet.
Good question. Yeah, Donna?
How many years would the bond issue? Would that be 20, 25?
That's based on a 30-year bond.
30 year?
Yeah.
Okay. And so the settlement money, using the interest from that, how long would you be calculating that out for before you need to start spending down that settlement money?
Yeah, so at the interest rates that we're investing in right now, we would actually apply that would be a yearly vote at town meeting, because those monies would go into free cash and become part of free cash. So it would be a free cash appropriation specifically for the bond payment. So, Kathy?
I have a separate question. We talked about the old building being demolished. One organization that's in that building now is the VFW. And they do have funds there, and in the funds, is there going to be a spot within this new fund funds for that organization to be there? And because the police station is going to be right there, could their money be something in that?
Yeah, so we did actually, it wasn't a slide, I don't know if we mentioned it, but on the slide, there was a part about VFW and the food pantry. So the options for those could be in the central fire station or in space in town hall. As far as something off of the community room, certainly something that we could look at as storage space. Couldn't say without going back exactly to with Brian and the chiefs on that, but we did address them, that and the food pantry is in part of the plans for 2 other structures that will have space. So, anyone else? Yeah. Harold. Oh, Harold, yeah, sorry.
One of the things that somewhat was touched on by Chief Brown is the safety aspect, limitations on the fire trucks that they can currently order due to the size of the current firehouse. When you go to these either 14 by 14 doors, overhead doors, you can get pretty much any truck you want. I'm a past member of Lions Fire, and they ordered a ladder truck based on the historic building, which limited them to a 75-foot ladder. If you guys want a ladder truck in your future to reach the top stories on Main Street, you need to have a 100-foot stick or 100-foot basket, whatever you're going to go after. So I think that if you're going to upgrade, you have to upgrade to the full extent, and I think that this project is going to do that all the way around. Police, fire, EMS, I think this is a great project for the future of the town.
I'm going to quote Ron Tooner Driscoll. 27 years ago, he wanted a ladder truck. And 27 years ago, he didn't have a place to put a ladder truck. I don't want a ladder truck. Our community needs an aerial device. And we could never do it in the building that we're in now. Not saying that I'm planning to buy one tomorrow and hope that you vote on the building, but as Harold points out, this building becomes a catalyst for us to buy apparatus that isn't built to suit the space, but is built to suit the community. And I think an aerial device would be down the road for this community once we save enough money through our stabilization fund to be able to afford one. That's a very good point, thank you.
We live in a safety-first world now. There's
Yeah.
no shortcuts allowed anymore due to insurance and lawsuits. So any steps that are made for the future need to be safety steps. And if that's what you want to do, you know, you have some big houses that are a long ways off the road. You might have to access a roof or a second or third floor window.
And another thing that's a point well made, while someone's brought up an aerial device, how many people remember geometry from high school? Everyone says, why do you need a 100-foot ladder truck? We don't have any buildings that are 100 feet tall. But if we remember that the magic part of a ladder truck represents the hypotenuse of the right triangle, which is the longest distance from where the truck sits on the road to where the house is. So a 100-foot aerial for our community is all about reach and safety, not about how tall it can be.
That was for exercise.
Other questions? I want to thank everyone for being here tonight. We do have all of the current plans are in the back there, so we definitely encourage you to check them out. You can look at the floor plans much closer there. We will be around too if you have other questions. There's some handouts. But if you think of anything in the meantime, feel free to call me at Town Hall anytime, stop in. And I don't know if any board members had anything before we wrap up?
No, thank you. Great presentation.
Yeah. Thank you guys very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah.